and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion. Handmade films is purported to have largely saved the independent British film industry in the late 1970s and 80s. It was founded by Eric Idle and George Harrison to initially support Python projects at a time when the British film industry was struggling and indeed needed a firm leg up, especially in the regard of independent film financing. Now, this enterprise brought us films like Bellman and True, Mona Lisa, Life of Brian, The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn, The Long Good Friday, Privates on Parade, How to Get Ahead in Advertising, and With Neil and I. Many of these projects attracted major British performers as well. Now, Time Bandits was director and Python member Terry Gilliam's second directorial outing after the moderately successful Jabberwocky. Time Bandits changed everything for handmade films, giving the company the success that it needed at the box office, and they catered for both children and adult audiences. Children got an exciting fantasy film, and adults who accompanied them to the cinema got a nostalgia trip back to their childhood at the same time, with dwarves and strange creatures all revolving around a young boy as the central protagonist. Now, this was a recipe for success, and with John Cleese as the cheery Robin Hood, they couldn't go wrong. Plus, there hadn't been anything quite like it before at the British cinema. In 1979, Terry Gilliam was unable to set up his film Brazil. Therefore, he proposed a family film instead. Time Bandits was co-written with the fellow Monty Python actor Michael Palin and financed by ex-Beatle George Harrison's Handmade Films and filmed in England, Morocco and Wales. The film was released in cinemas on the 2nd of July 1981, and that's in the United Kingdom, and on the 6th of November that year in the United States. On its initial release, the film received many positive reviews from critics and opened at number 1, indeed, at the weekend box office in both the US and Canada, and by the end of its run it had grossed $36 million on an original budget of only $5 million. Kevin's an 11-year-old boy. He's fascinated by history, particularly that of ancient Greece. His parents ignore his activities and, having become obsessed with buying the latest household gadgets, one night, as Kevin is sleeping, an armoured knight on a horse bursts out of his wardrobe, and Kevin hides under the covers as the knight rides off into the forest where once his bedroom wall had been. When Kevin looks again, the room is back to normal, and he finds one of his photos on the wall similar to the forest that he saw. The next night, he prepares a satchel with supplies and a Polaroid camera, but he's surprised when 6 dwarves spill out of his wardrobe. Kevin quickly learns the group has stolen a map and is looking for an exit from his room before they are discovered. They find very quickly that the bedroom wall leads to a portal, and Kevin is hesitant to join until the apparition of a floating, menacing head, the Supreme Being, played by Sir Ralph Richardson, appears behind them, demanding the return of the map. Kevin and the dwarves fall into an empty void at the end of the hallway. Now, the journey begins there, but the journey of the film itself is equally as interesting. Now, although Gilliam hadn't read the C.S. Lewis book, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, when he made Time Bandits, some viewers see a connection and echoes of C.S. Lewis in the film, as Gilliam fearlessly brings the logic of the children's literature to the screen. Now, plunging headfirst into history, myth, legend and fairy tale, Gilliam sends his characters, the boy and 6 good-natured and rather larcenous little persons, careening through time itself, twisting interactions with Napoleon, Robin Hood and Agamemnon, played respectively by Ian Holm, John Cleese and Sean Connery. The landscape is populated by giants, ogres and sinister crones of legend and fairy tale, all, of course, in the service of Gilliam's weird ecstatic vision. British and American actors are featured in the film as well. Sean Connery was cast as Agamemnon, for instance, after meeting the producer, O'Brien, on a golf course. And a reference in the script introduced the character with the joke description, removing his helmet reveals himself to be none other than Sean Connery, or an actor of equal but cheaper stature. Connery was a Python fan, of course, and he agreed to do the role for a nominal fee in return for a share of the gross profits. The part of Robin Hood was originally written for Palin, but John Cleese was eventually cast as his name was considered more bankable than Palin's at the time, and Palin decided to appear still in the film, with Shelley Duvall in the very small recurring roles of Vincent and Pansy. Cleese based his performance of Robin Hood on the Duke of Kent by watching him having meaningless conversations with footballers at the FA Cup final. Sir Ralph Richardson's casting as the Supreme Being was really because he was regarded pretty much near God in the acting profession at the time. Now, Richardson took his role very seriously indeed, marking out his lines in red ink and occasionally saying, "God wouldn't say that." Ruth Gordon and Gilda Radner were considered for the role of Mrs. Ogre. Now, Palin felt Gordon was the best choice for that role, but fortunately she had to drop out after sustaining an injury shooting Any Which Way You Can. The studio wanted Gilda Radner, considering her to be bankable, but Gilliam campaigned instead for Katherine Hellman to get the role, due to her popularity at the time in the TV comedy Soap. Gilliam has referred to Time Bandits as the first in his trilogy of imagination, followed by Brazil in 1985 and ending with The Adventures of Baron Munchausen in 1988. Now, all these films are about craziness of our awkwardly ordered society and the desire to escape it through whatever means possible. Now, all three films focus on these struggles and attempts to escape them through imagination. Time Bandits, for instance, through the eyes of a child, Brazil taken through the eyes of a man in his 30s, and Munchausen through the eyes of an elderly man. With Gilliam's highly inventive imagination, Time Bandits contained fairly advanced visual effects for its time, now looking more dated, sadly. Now, this modern whimsy is a sort of twisted fantasy adventure through time, and it remains an original to this day and shows us what Gilliam was capable of. Filming was partly on location with Raglan Castle, standing in for Castiglione della Siviera, and Epping Forest as Sherwood Forest, and Ait Ben Haddou as Agamemnon's Palace in Mycenae. Interior scenes were filmed at Lee International Film Studios. Gilliam said he wanted to film the piece from a kid's point of view, so he shot from a low camera angle. Criterion are really celebrating Gilliam's work this year, especially with no less than 3 4K UHD releases of his films in the collection this year alone, and everyone hopes that they top that off with Brazil, which for me is his masterwork, or at the very least, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, or the newer title Tideland might join the collection in 4K, who knows, we shall see. Now, Time Bandits comes to the collection in 4K UHD with Dolby Vision and HDR, and the following special features. An audio commentary featuring Gilliam, co-writer, actor Michael Palin, and actors John Cleese, David Warner and Craig Warnock. A programme on the creation of the film's various historical periods and fantasy worlds, narrated by the film writer David Morgan and featuring production designer Millie Burns and the costume designer James Atchison. A conversation between Gilliam and film scholar Peter Bonbag. It's recorded at the 1998 Midnight Sun Film Festival. An appearance by the actor Shelley Duvall on Tom Schneider's Tomorrow Show in 1981. Gallery of rare photographs from the set. There's a trailer, of course, and an essay written by critic David Sterrett. And cover of the disc is based on the theatrical poster taken from the film. Featuring a darkly playful script by Gilliam and his Monty Python cohort, Michael Palin, Time Bandits from 1981 is at once a giddy fairy tale, a revisionist history lesson, and a satire of technology gone awry. The film's a running time of 116 minutes, and it's a full widescreen presentation, that's no black bars, and it's dazzlingly colourful with its HDR grading in its 4K UHD release, available as Spine 37 from Tuesday the 13th of June. And as always, just late news, I'd like to quickly mention that also Arrow Video in the UK are bringing out Time Bandits also with the same restoration on 4K.